Hello and welcome to this Q&A from the Fertility Alliance. And today we are going to be talking to Charlie Bishop, who is the director of MRKH Connect, which is a charity. And Charlie is going to be explaining a bit about what they do and what they're here for. So, Charlie, I wanted to start by asking you, what actually is MRKH?
Great question and hello. So MRKH is Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome. As you might have guessed, we shorten it to MRKH just because it's much easier to say than the whole phrase. And it's named after the doctors that actually identified the syndrome over many years, and they weren't all connected to each other. So several doctors identified different components. But essentially, MRKH is a condition that affects 1 in 5,000 female births. It's a congenital condition, so it's present from birth. And it's where there is the absence or underdevelopment of the womb, absence of the cervix, and typically shortening of the vaginal tract as well. So ovaries are present, but then the actual development of the uterus and such like is doesn't form in the way it should do, essentially. There are two types to MRK. So there's type 1, which is typified by what I just explained. And then there's type 2, where those with type 2 may also have impacts to their kidneys, skeletal abnormalities like scoliosis, for example, hearing defects, and also we hear reports of heart defects also being linked. And these are all related to the different development activity that's happening, typically early stage pregnancy, when it is expected that MRKH may form, or when those issues may develop in terms of the fetal development.
I wonder if you could explain a bit about the kind of impact that it can have on people's lives.
Yeah, so it's difficult because one thing I didn't mention before. So typically, it's not diagnosed at birth. Typically, it is something that is usually diagnosed around the kind of mid-teens, basically when periods don't start. So typically 15 to 17, you may go to the GP like I did myself, and saying my periods haven't started, and then they go through, start some investigations as to why, and then they go through the process of and that can take some time. It depends obviously on the GP, the familiarity they have with primary amenorrhea and conditions associated with that, as to if you're directly referred, or whether there may be some stages before you get to a gynecologist to go through that in more detail. So typically you wouldn't know about that until you get to that stage. And for me, that was this was back in 2001. I was diagnosed via a laparoscopy. So I'd had an ultrasound, a pelvic ultrasound. I'd also been put on the pill for a short time. And then neither of those were conclusive enough. So then they did a laparoscopy to identify that I didn't have a uterus. And I was lucky that there was a specialist that my gynecologist knew that they could refer me. But that's not always the case, of course. And different knowledge in different areas of the country and different areas globally, it means that can take some time before you get to that support. And I think that's the biggest impact, is facing something that you are totally unprepared for. We go through school, sex education, and we learn about periods, of course, and we learn that sometimes people start periods early and sometimes people start periods later, but we don't learn what happens if you don't start periods, and that's okay, but it's just there is a reason for that, and and then of course I think that has a huge impact on the mental health side of having a diagnosis like MRKH. And typically at that age, of course, you're being told that not only will you not have a period, but also that you won't ever be able to carry a child. So you're very young to take on that information. And there may be some cases where those who have the type 2 version of MRKH, and therefore perhaps have issues with kidneys and such, like some may only have one kidney, for example, that may be identified slightly earlier just because of the nature of that manifestation. So even earlier you may find out, but it's typically around that kind of mid-teens range. So I would say the mental health impact is really the biggest impact on how to actually process MRKH and what this means.
Do you think we do need more awareness of the condition? And I'm not thinking about just amongst the public, but also maybe GPs as well.
Absolutely. And it's something we've been trying to advocate for over the last few years. And since the charity was founded 10 years ago, a big part of that is not just the public outreach and obviously making sure we can reach the community at large, but also how we can serve the medical community better as a wider community of MRKs. What can we do to help improve the knowledge? And I think there is a general feeling amongst the community which is, why don't they know? I mean, there's not that many reasons why a teenage girl is going to come to a doctor and hasn't started their period. So there are only a handful of perhaps situations that you might explore to try and identify what the cause could be. Um, and yet it still seems so underrepresented and the knowledge so limited. So that is something we're trying to improve, and we know is something that the community at large is also looking into, but definitely more awareness is needed. And many GPs perhaps will only see cases of it so few times in their careers that it can make it very difficult for GPs to know everything. Of course, they have to know a lot of different situations and a lot of different specialisms to meet the needs of the wider public. But it does feel a little bit to me in this case that there's perhaps more that we could do to enhance the knowledge and improve awareness. And yeah, it's been great to see on Instagram recently. There was a GP who picked up a book that talks about MRKH, and she was so grateful to see. And she posted about it, completely unconnected to us, but it was so nice to see a GP recognize I didn't know anything about this, and actually taking the time to acknowledge and learn about the condition and perhaps share that with their networks. And I think we need more of those kind of things.
Does that lack of awareness sometimes mean that there's a long time to diagnosis?
It can be, yes. And it also is is not just awareness, also can sometimes be where you are in the country, and also which country you are in, of course, as well. But if we talk specifically about the UK, there is such a disparate level of knowledge and information about not only the condition, but where to send someone if they are identified with the condition. And I think that has then led to a lot of uncertainty over the years where people being told that there's no one else like them in the world. So they feel, ultimately, you're a teenager already being told something that's completely tipped your life upside down. And then you're being told that you're the only one that perhaps has this condition. So I think awareness as well of the specialist centres that are able to support at a kind of gynecological and psychological support level. And 20 years ago, that was probably only one in London, but now there are kind of four or five around the UK that have those kind of specific clinicians associated with MRKH and able to support those. So there's now more referrals and a bit more spread around the UK than just in London. But we still see it, and it's something that does disappoint me that we are, you know, 20 plus years on from my own diagnosis with MRKH, and we're still facing those same challenges of getting that diagnosis early enough for GPs not to just keep uh, you know perhaps fobbing off a patient, telling them to come back or come back and we'll investigate another time, and perhaps maybe not having the time or long waiting lists, taking a long time to get appointments. We know that's an issue in general at the moment as well. And then, of course, very long waiting lists sometimes to see a specialist, even at a gynecologist level, before you're then perhaps referred to a specialist hospital where you may have to wait again. So it can be a long process. It can be several months from that perhaps initial chat with the GP to actually getting an answer as to what that is. And some people wait years, much less so now, but I feel that that element has improved. But yeah, there's more we can do, I hope.
And what are the options now available to someone with MRKH who might want to have a family?
Yes, so obviously being born without a uterus means that you're not able to carry your own child, but being born with ovaries means it is possible, the same as anyone else with ovaries, to be able to go through the fertility process and have IVF, and then go through a surrogacy process if you want to explore that for biological children. Of course, there's adoption and fostering. And then the newer alternative, but still in the very much in the trial phase, is of course a uterus transplant program. And in the UK, that's run and spearheaded by Womb Transplant UK, and they have done 4 or 5 womb transplants now, and I believe 75% of those have been for individuals with MRKH. So it's really, it's there's a lot to consider with that particular option, I would say, more so than the others. But there are now different things different paths that can be pursued, and certainly more information. I would always encourage people to explore the information that's available. But at the same time, of course, we see a lot of people who don't go down those routes, or perhaps have, and it's not worked how they wanted, or perhaps they never wanted to have children. And so I think that, from our perspective as a peer support charity, we try to balance the different paths as equal paths. Of course, it depends, of course, what is the route that is most suited to you, or perhaps the route that you have ended up. Maybe it's not where you plan to be. And I think that's a big part for people for anyone diagnosed with MRKH is, what could be the options if I want to pursue having children, but also knowing that there's support if that doesn't perhaps work out, because they're also quite heavy options. It's quite a lot to consider with all of those. And that's a big part, I think, of the mental health toll of it's not as easy as it is for other people. I think that's that it can feel very triggering to see friends or other family members for whom it seems so straightforward to have children, and then through no fault of our own, we're born in a situation where that's not possible. And I think that can also make it very difficult, very emotional and triggering journey to go through exploring those different routes, and are any of them viable? Are any of them the routes that you want to go down? So yeah, there's some different considerations.
I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you got involved with the charity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I didn't actually set up the charity. So it was set up by two MRKHs back in 2014, and I joined as a trustee probably 2017 to help out, just little bits here and there. Of course, being on a trustee board, being as an advisor, as much as helping out on the peer support side. And then the two directors, they decided that they needed to take a step back, or they wanted to take a step back from the charity, and asked if I would take over control, and which was extremely flattering and humbling. And I'll be very honest, I didn't quite realize what I was saying yes to at the time. But it's been a fantastic experience, and great to still keep in touch with them, Kelly and Janet, who set up the charity, and for them to be able to see it grow in a way that they were, interested to do, but it just didn't quite work out for them. But how happy it seems that they are, that we've been able to build on their strong foundation, and get to where we are today. So no, it's been something I'd always wanted to be able to use the MRKH for good in this case. It took a long time, like it does for most people, to actually process the diagnosis. What does this mean for me? And I had a kind of epiphany, I would say, in my early 30s, where I thought, actually, I spent too long thinking about this and thinking about a future that I don't know what that's going to look like. And actually, I'd much rather try to do something with that, do something I can give back, not just to the hospital. I used to do sometimes some talks at Queen Charlotte and Chelsea Hospital, which was the national centre and now becomes one of these specialist centres in the UK. But equally be able to kind of share my experiences for others. And by starting writing a blog and then doing some fundraising, and then it kind of led to this path. So it's been a journey.
I wonder if you could tell us a bit about what the charity actually does. How does MRKH Connect work and what do you actually do?
Great question. Yes. So MRKH Connect, as the name perhaps suggests, we connect those with MRKH together. That's really the core of our mission, is to make sure that no one with MRKH feels alone. This has been exactly the same mission since since the charity started in 2014, and was all built on this premise of anywhere in the world you are, you should be able to connect with someone else if you want to do so. So that's really what the basis of MRKH Connect is. So we're a peer-led organization. So we're not professional or medical support. We are run by peers with a board of trustees as well. And really our focus is on events that bring people together. And or supporting events that bring people together, as well as raising public awareness and building resources for those with MRKH, as well as their family or other supporters, boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, and such like. So we do that by running events. We run an online event every 6 weeks called Connect with Friends. And that's just a space only for those with MRKH. Come along, informal, relaxed. We hold it on Zoom, so anyone's welcome to join, as long as they have MRKH. And we talk about lots of different topics. Sometimes not so much MRKH related. Sometimes it's very heavy on the MRKH. It really depends what the topics are that people want to talk about on those particular calls. And sometimes we also have guest speakers from typically from within our community that share experiences, or we'll do something creative, like a creative workshop or something like that. And we do an in-person event once a year in London. We've run that for the last 4 years, called Connect Live, and we get speakers come and join, both from the community as well as professionals. So this year we had Professor Richard Smith and Isabel Quiroga, who did the uterus transplant. So they came to talk to the group about their experiences, and really, bring it down to the peer level, which I think was really, really important. And aside from that, it's a lot of collaboration. It's a lot of networking with yourselves, of course, and with other organizations that are not just MRKH focused. Of course, that is important for us as well, to connect with our peers within the MRKH community globally, but also to make sure we have built up a network of our own that covers the breadth of fertility, and that's organizations like Fertility Alliance. It's also surrogacy organizations, Surrogacy UK and Adoption UK, and others that can provide resources to our community that we just simply cannot have, or cannot do, and would not have the time to build ourselves. And also, we wouldn't need to, there's no point in reinventing the wheel when these fantastic resources already exist from these other organizations. So to be a hub for information is also helpful, and to allow the community to find the information most relevant to them. So we do include a lot of personal experiences. So people contribute with their blogs. Some of those are public, some of those are anonymous, but they don't have to be. And then also we have areas on our pages where people can ask questions. No question is too silly. They don't have to put their name to it, and it's just an opportunity, if they're uncertain about something, to be able to raise a question and get an answer. But our focus is always the community, and how to ensure that we can empower the community as much as possible, but also provide and keep on top of the different resources that are relevant to the community as well.
I wonder, for your community, what are the kind of key changes that you'd really like to see?
Oh, yeah. So, I think what we really like to see is improvements on the sex education side. I think we hear it a lot that, I wish this was better. I wish I'd been told this. And I think there's a big drive in our community, as well as in the wider DSD, DRD community as well. So, differences in sex as well as reproductive development. So a broader range of conditions where what can we do collaboratively to actually improve awareness so that we don't have individuals who get to those early, mid, late teen, time frames and just get hit with a diagnosis of something that they just simply were not prepared for. And so that's something we're exploring at the moment through some collaborations to see, what can we do to improve this awareness. And it's certainly something we're seeing more requests come in the chats and such like on improved awareness for GPs, as you also alluded to, also the sex education side. I think those are areas that are big for our community and would certainly help boost the awareness. But I do see that I do feel that we're also quite lucky in some ways that over the last couple of years, especially, there has been more media coverage of MRKH. We've had obviously the uterus transplant program, and we have been able to contribute to some of the media as along with a number of peers from the community as well. And then, of course, we had the lovely Betty who was on Race Across the World. So suddenly we had a mainstream television program that was talking about MRKH, which was incredible. So I think different to some to the wider fertility challenges, I think there's so much more that we need to do for fertility as a whole. There are uh, societal things we need to do. There's also mindsets we need to change to improve awareness of fertility in general. And I think, the MRKH community, we're 1 in 5,000, which is not as rare as it perhaps seems that it might be. It equates to about 7 or 8 thousand people in the UK, for example, that would have MRKH. But we're also a very powerful community, I would say. There's a lot of voices, a lot of action there that people really want to drive change, and that's great because that means there's a lot of advocacy and a lot of interest in making improvements. But it's doing that in the best way to have the biggest impact.
Charlie, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll make sure that we include contact details for MRKH with this. But thank you so much. That was really excellent.